What's going on, guys? We're back with an update on the HEMI swap Jeep Renegade. I'm going to go over the progress I've been making over the past few weeks and figure out what we have left to do before I get this thing fired up. I set a goal about 6 months ago to have this thing running by the end of October, and although I haven't failed yet, I realized I got to get serious about finishing this thing and quit getting distracted by unnecessary side quests like titanium brake shields and 3D printed wide body kit. Although I did set a goal and a timeline, I had no real plan. I've mostly just been working on random parts of the build, trying to remember what needs to be done next. And yeah, that's a pretty terrible way of keeping track of a build this complex. So I made a list. And since I've just been keeping track of everything in my head, I guarantee there's something I'm forgetting. So if you can, comment below, let me know what I'm forgetting. Although I do have a list, I guarantee there's something missing from here. And I don't want to have an issue when I do that first fire up. Just trying to make sure this thing goes off as flawlessly as possible. I guess we'll go ahead, do a walk around, check out all the work I've done over the past few weeks, go over the list. I do have a lot of stuff already marked off, so that's good, but we still have plenty of work left to do. So I guess we'll go ahead, jump right into it. In no particular order, guess we'll go ahead and start at the rear suspension. You can see we got the rear shock mounts fabricated, rear shocks installed, and I even had to drill a hole up top so I could make adjustments on the shocks. I might have to tweak those a little bit. There is access, but the shocks also come with an extension for the adjustment, but I was running into the side there. Hole didn't get drilled straight on there, so we'll have to get that sorted out. So while we're back here also, that's the titanium brake shield. We also have to fill in these gaps here on the wheel tubs. Got the sheet metal already cut, just got to weld that in. That'll be good to go. Got to figure out this hole here. We don't need it to run, but I don't want to do any more welding than I have to once the electrical is in here. So, all right, now we'll go ahead, check out the front. You can see I got the front AAD suspension. All that is in place, good to go. Alignment hasn't been set yet because next up on the list, I have to install rubber boots on the steering rack. So for some reason, when I assembled everything, I forgot to put these on. So I have to take this apart, put the boots on, and then dial in the alignment. And yeah, that's the last thing on the suspension and steering. Up next on the list, we got the evap charcoal canister. I already made new mounts for the canister, but I just have to install it. It's gonna go right back here. Nothing special, but that's the canister there. Came out of a Dodge Charger. It fits a lot better than the Renegade one does, and should bolt in no problem. I do have to make new lines. You can see I had to retrofit the fittings. AN line's gonna be connected to those. It'll tie in with the rest of that. And the whole evap system will be all AN line, everything on fuel system, good to go. All right, so brakes, I still have to go through, double check all the fittings, but I did verify copper crush washers on all the banjo bolts. Bleeders are installed on top of the calipers, front and rear. So I did install dry brake fittings, so you can check these out. I'm kind of proud of this design. So I 3D printed a little housing, hold the dry brake fitting. It's going to be a little difficult doing one-handed, but push in, twist, and quick connect on the brakes. So no leaks at all. So that way I'll be able to remove this whole assembly if I need to. No leaks on the system. And then once I'm done, come on. There we go. Yeah, just push in, twist, and it locks in there. No problem. Easy disconnect, no mess. So that was unnecessary, but so is everything. Next up, brake pedal. I got that bolted in. Same with the master cylinder. All that. It's all tucked back behind there, up in the firewall. Can't see anything, but it's there. So after that, ABS module. ABS is all secured. Good to go. I put rubber bushings in there, so it's got some play. The factory one actually had rubber bushings as well. I did have it hard mounted, but I figured the rubber bushings are in there for a reason. Probably once this thing starts like pulsating, once the ABS is active, it's, might serve a purpose. I don't know what I'm doing, just to clarify. I'm just kind of winging this whole thing. So, and brakes, brake reservoir. Wait, brake reservoir is installed and secured. I can cross that off the list. I still have to fill and bleed the system. So I want to verify the rest of the lines, and then we'll go ahead, fill that, do a vacuum bleed on it. Should be good to go. The cooling and heating system. All right, we'll take a look at that. I installed a billet aluminum thermostat housing. I also did a thermostat delete kit from 797 Performance. It's just a restriction plate. So let me get one of the spares. Nope. There we go. You can see it's just a restriction orifice, allows a set amount of flow rate through there, so you don't have to worry about a thermostat opening, closing. No failure points. It is what it is. Next up, I got the expansion tank installed, bolted up, hoses connected, and you can see I had to install constant tension clamps. I did have hose clamps on everything. After reading a little bit, that's not ideal for a heating, cooling system like that, so I went ahead, put constant tension clamps on everything. You can see I even did Mishimoto Gold constant tension clamp there, and one there as well. So everything should be good on the heating and cooling system. So that's for engine coolant, water. So next up, air conditioning, because South Louisiana have to have AC, although my daily driver doesn't, because, you know. So I did have to replace the AC condenser because I poked a couple holes in the last one. Oh yeah, and carbon fiber stickers, because I don't know why, I was bored. So I did have to go through, replace all the rubber seals on all the AC lines. I did have a leak here. When I went to leak check this system, this fitting here was leaking. So once I replaced the rubber gasket there, no more leaks. System holds good vacuum, holds good pressure. Everything's good to go. So I'm gonna wait till this thing's actually up and running before I put any refrigerant in there, just in case something happens. I don't want to have to disconnect, remove anything, and then, you know, have to deal with having to properly evacuate that. So you definitely don't want to vent that to the atmosphere, because yeah, that's not good. Pretty sure it's illegal too. So after that, transmission. So I had to hook up the transmission cooler. Let me get this thing out of the way. All right, so this is the transmission oil cooler. I ran new AN lines, all new fittings, and if you can see it, not really, but you can kind of see it. New, oh man, I got an O2 sensor hanging. That's something else to add to the list. But that's new transmission oil pan. So in a little bit of research I did, you're suggested to change the oil pan because it has an integral filter. So that was one more thing to get taken care of. So up next, I had to take a look at the engine oil cooler. I went ahead and made sure all the AN lines were tight, nothing in a bind, everything secured. And also, I'm not sure if you can see, I'm not sure if you can get a good look, but made sure the oil filter was good to go. Up next, I got to figure out how to mount the dipstick guide tube here. It used to be mounted to the exhaust manifold, but the stud that I took out of there, replaced with a bolt, so I got to figure that out. We'll get it. Not too worried about that, though. After I get the dipstick mounted, I got to fill the engine with oil, and then I got to prime the oil system. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to take off the alternator to get up in there. You got to pull the oil pressure sensor, hook a hose up there, and actually pump it in there. The reason I'm going to prime the oil system by manually pumping oil into the engine block is because this thing has sat for a few years, and any assembly lube, any oil that was anywhere is probably no longer there, has dripped down, or would just be inadequate for cranking this thing over so much, trying to do a first start. In order to prove that the oil system is primed, I do have to take the valve covers off. So that means pulling the coil packs, getting the wiring out of the way, pulling the valve covers off, and that way when I'm pumping the oil in, you'll actually see it come out of the whole rocker assembly. And that's just one more step, one more barrier to make sure this thing doesn't have any issues when it is firing up. So well, I also secured that in place too for some hose clamps. But oh man, that is that's ridiculous. That just shouldn't be in there. So all right, so also once I'm doing all that, I also don't want to do a compression test. This thing has sat for a while. Just want to make sure we don't have any issues with the valve train. And I did build this by myself. I'd never rebuilt an engine, never done any valve work at all. And I honestly should have done a compression test when I was rebuilding this thing, but again, I don't know what I'm doing, and better late than never, I guess. So I guess we'll jump to the wheel tubs. We already talked about all that. I still have to finish up welding in the rear before I do any electrical. So electrical is going to be the last thing. So I did already mount the Mechman high output alternator. Gonna take that off for doing the oil system. But after the oil is primed, I think I'm gonna go ahead, jump on the electrical. So I do have to install the entire Dodge Charger wiring harness. So if you're not familiar, I'm gonna be using as much of a charger as possible, trying to get this thing running. Ideally, it won't even know that it is not in a charger. So I still have to mount the ECU. That's a little bit of real estate that I have. I'm not sure what I'm doing with that. I had it blocked off for air inlet to go in through there. That's the factory Renegade air inlet. And then it goes down through that rectangle hole back there, which would be behind the ECU. So I have a little duct that goes in, 90s down, and then blows down in there. I'm not sure about that yet because I still have to route. So I still have to route the wires from the alternator back into the cabin, and I think that would be possibly the best route. Of course, I'd have to put some type of guide, some type of seal, something to protect the 2-aught wires running from the alternator back there. And I also have to mount all the relay, fuse panel, everything for the charger right there. It should go right about there. So, and this is the factory charger bracket. Oop. Yeah. Be a little careful. So this is the factory charger bracket. I'm gonna have to modify it a little bit, but you can see it's gonna go right around there. So that's just one more issue I gotta figure out. Shouldn't be too difficult to solve though. So I think that wraps up just about everything on this thing before I can actually fire it up. There's still tons more interior wise I have to get done before I put this thing on the road. But you know, as far as dash, I gotta mount the gauges too. So the gauges and the keys. Oh man, okay, so yeah, I have tons more. So remind me, put a comment down below. Anything I have forgotten, I need help. I really need help trying to figure out everything left on this thing. Got to remember every small detail, but we're getting there. I'm hoping it's still not the end of October yet. Still got a few more weeks. I'm trying to get this thing. Ideally, I wanted it fired up for SEMA, like my own personal SEMA kind of thing. All those things not going to SEMA. It was just kind of a personal goal of mine to get it done by the end of October, at least fired up for the first time. Yeah, definitely not on the road yet, but we're heading in the right direction. So, but anyway, I'm going to let y'all go. Thanks for following along with the build so far, and I'll see you in the next one.